Hi, Emilio. I'm very happy to see that you decided to buy the course and that you've begun with your essays. So let's take a look and see what you said here. The first one is about doing an enjoyable activity with a child. Let's see what you said. There are many different activities that children could develop early in their lives. Well, let's talk about this for a second. You don't really develop an activity. You are involved in an activity. You perform an activity. Um, So this vocabulary here is a little awkward, all right? Some sort of actions helps them to develop different areas of their brain, such as video games or sports. This essay will discuss both issues using examples from recreative activities and physical abilities to show up points and keep arguments up. All right, so let's talk about this introduction as well as the task itself. So let's look at the task. Doing an enjoyable activity with a child can develop better skills and imagination than reading. So you're supposed to rephrase this, but you didn't mention anything about reading in your introduction. And so that's a little bit of a problem because you've skipped what the comparison is here. Okay, so it doesn't want you to talk just about activities that develop good skills and imagination, but activities that do this better than reading. So you should incorporate reading somewhere into your rephrasing of this, okay? So you could have done it here, for example. And I didn't really, now let's talk about the other thing. There were some areas here in terms of the writing that was a little awkward, so let's fix some of the grammar. Some actions help them to develop different areas of their brain better than reading can, such as video games or sports. Okay, that's one way you could have done this. And then you said you're going to discuss both issues, but what are the both issues? Because you didn't really have two issues here. You only had this idea of actions, okay? And then you had these two examples. So maybe you didn't mean issues. Maybe you meant this essay will discuss both examples. All right, and then you, of course, you would have to change the rest of the sentence. So what I want to encourage you to do is to use the template as much as possible now in the beginning so that you get familiar with it so that you, can adopt kind of and start to really incorporate some of these expressions into your writing. All right, and then as you progress in the course and feel a little more comfortable, maybe you can stray away from it a little bit. All right, but for now, I'd really like you to try to use the language from the template. Here, you've got some problems. We don't show up points and we don't keep arguments up. First of all, we try to avoid phrasal verbs in IELTS essays because they do sound rather informal and certainly not academic. So you would need to rephrase this as well. All right, let's move on now. Oh, and then there's one other thing before we move on. You didn't really say your opinion. And part of the reason why you didn't say your opinion is because you didn't really say whether you think that activities can develop better skills and imagination than reading. So it's an introduction that has some issues. Okay, let's move on now. Firstly, doing recreative activities or having personal contact activities from an early age helps children to develop skills and abilities in their mind rather than only read or listen to their relatives. Or I don't know why you're talking about listening to their relatives here. That's irrelevant. This is largely because the only activity... no, you have to be careful with only. When you put it in different places in a sentence, it changes the meaning. So this is largely because the activity of reading only is sometimes a dull activity for many children. Now, we never use kids in IELTS because it's informal. All right, number one. Number two, activity, activity. Find another word, find another synonym. Okay? For example, recent studies from Cornell University, capital U, show that the youngest brain needs to do activities related with enjoyable and funny activities, again, activities, such as playing on game consoles like PlayStation. Therefore, it is more likely that enjoyable activities have more impact in young people than reading. Okay, so this was okay, except you didn't really talk about these better skills? This is supposed to be talking about skills. You said it helps them to develop skills, but you never really talked about those skills. You never told us what they are. You never told us how things like PlayStation can help them develop skills and which skills. So it was not really developed. You kind of just touched on the topic, but you didn't really answer it. All right, you kind of just stayed on the periphery of the topic, and so I'd like you to kind of develop it directly more. On the other hand, physical activities can lead to develop an adequate locomotor system. Besides, they can improve their sense of competition. Now, let's take a second to talk about this expression here, on the other hand. If you're going to use it, then you needed to use on the one hand here. These two go together. So, it should be on the one hand in this paragraph and on the other hand in this paragraph. Or you could say firstly in this paragraph and then secondly in this paragraph. But anytime you use either of these expressions, you kind of commit yourself to using their partners, so to speak, okay? So let's assume you meant here, secondly, physical activities can lead to develop an adequate locomotor system. And in addition, or not even and in addition, just and, they can improve their sense of competition. Okay, who is there? All right. Do you mean the physical activities sense of competition? Because we have no understanding of who this there refers to. This is due to the fact that practicing sport strengthens, that's the verb, en here, s, many muscles in the human body. For instance, it is known that playing soccer, football, and so forth not only helps to strengthen our young body, but increases the ability and skills of interaction with other children. Consequently, these sorts of physical activities increase, no s, the cognitive abilities of children. Okay, well, let's see. How do you equal physical abilities with cognitive abilities? Yeah, I understand maybe social abilities, but I don't know where you got the cognitive here. Okay, to conclude, I totally agree to the fact that doing sports and recreative activities can develop superior skills in reading. Okay, now here I would like a little more meat on the bones of this conclusion. I totally agree. I didn't really care for the totally agree. It just feels a little conversational. To conclude, doing sports and recreative activities can develop skills, superior skills in children more than reading can, and then leave us with another sentence, because you've got this one sentence conclusion here. Try to make some sort of prediction for the future, okay? So in the future, recreational activities will be considered a more important part of education, something like that. Now, let's talk about, we talked a lot about this essay, what worked, what didn't work, but let's talk about one other thing that's really important. I want to bring your attention back to the task and what you were supposed to talk about. Better skills and imagination compared to reading. You talked about PlayStation, you talked about sports, but you never said anything about imagination. All right, and that's a big no-no because they expect you to talk about it. That's why they separated it from better skills. You need to discuss it separately. Okay, and not doing that is going to really reduce your score. So be careful, make sure you spend time analyzing the question and planning out your answer in order to make sure that it covers all the areas of the task. All right, so let's take a look here at the one about schools being more entertaining. Okay, so entertaining schools. Here we go. The world is changing, and at the same time, the technologies and many systems in different cultures need to change their education systems, for instance. Okay. Let's clean this up a little bit. Here, let's try it a little differently, okay? The world is changing, and at the same time, Why don't you do something like this instead? The world is changing, and as a result, many believe the education system needs to be changed as well. Okay? That was one way you could have done this. I think it works a little better than this, for instance, because this isn't just a for instance. This is actually what the whole essay is about. So you want to highlight that, and don't want to just include it as like a by the way kind of example. All right? The school system must add entertaining ing activities and try to interact with parents to do educational activities at home. This essay will mention both sides issues. I'm not really sure what you mean. I understand you mean both sides of the issue, but what are the two sides of the issue? Okay, it would make sense to say both sides of the issue if you had somewhere mentioned that, some people think, no, school's only supposed to be educational and that's it. And in fact, you should have put that in here somewhere. Okay, so rather than talking about parents doing educational activities at home, you should have talked about, some people think, no, we don't need to add entertainment. School needs to just focus on learning facts and figures and information and leave the entertainment elsewhere. Okay, then it would have made more sense for you to say both sides of the issue. Okay, so adding examples from activities at school and at home to illustrate points and support arguments. Okay, fine there. So let's move on. Firstly, the Western modern culture has changed in the last decades, and the education has had here the necessity to add new technologies, get rid of the, in their programs to improve and expand the knowledge of their students. This is largely because a higher population of students in the world spend so much, with a C not an S, time on their mobile phones or computer. For example, recent studies demonstrate that if the programs at school incorporate enjoyable tasks, such as video games that contain puzzles, the ability to solve problems will be more efficient and easier for the student than the traditional education that only explains with old-fashioned examples. Consequently, it is important to take advantage of the new century technologies. Okay, so apart from some of the grammatical things that I had to change here, Emilio, I want to talk a little bit about what you chose to focus on in this paragraph. Now, the good news is that you talked about enjoyable tasks like video games with puzzles, okay? And that, helps kids solve problems, etc. The problem is that I almost feel like you're answering a different essay question here, okay? The way you've structured this and all this talk about like technology and people spending time on their phones and computers, it's almost as if the essay is asking you, some people think that modern technologies need to be incorporated into education. To what extent do you agree or disagree? That's what it sounds like you're answering. But this essay is asking you about something really rather different, okay? Can you mention, using computer games with puzzles? Yeah, of course you can. But make sure that the focus of your paragraph is this idea of entertainment in school and incorporating more of this entertainment in school. So you want to kind of bring up this issue from the beginning rather than all the way down here somewhere in the middle of your paragraph. Okay? Because as I was reading this, I definitely felt like I was reading a different essay. So let's move on. Secondly, students, get rid of the, usually have enough leisure time at home, and they use that time to interact in the social medias. That's a little awkward. They use that time to interact with social media. I can't really find a better replacement here, so let's just leave it right now. And it happens to be that they are fooling around and get bad grades at school. All right, I don't really agree with some of this language because it's informal. Fooling around is definitely informal. You don't want to use it in a formal essay. All right, let's move on and then I'll give you some suggestions to replace it. That is why many schools try to integrate social media, get rid of the, to interact with the alumni at home or to use the technologies to rewind the content of a day schoolwork. As an example, it is known that some video games have interactive situations, such as Minecraft, that helps to organize ideas in the mind and to find out solutions for some sorts of problems. Therefore, nowadays, the traditional education is not as successful as the education that is involved with new technologies. All right, so again, I mean, this is about new technology in education. It's not about entertainment. All right, so I really definitely feel like you've misinterpreted this topic. You didn't mean day-to-day schoolwork. You meant day-to-day. That was one thing that I was trying to think about what you meant. And again, I was like, where are you going with this? I was trying to understand. This is really just about incorporating. This whole paragraph is pretty much what I said in the previous one, that it's about incorporating technology into education, but that's not what they're talking about. They want you to talk about something different here. They want you to talk about how schools can use entertaining activities, fun activities, games, play in education, and if they should include more of that. All right, so it would have been okay to use computers and video games as an example, but focusing on this idea of entertainment, enjoyment, light-hearted fun. All right, this is what is meant by entertainment. So it's off topic. Okay, let's see. And then you were talking about social media, which I didn't understand. Again, it has nothing to do with entertainment. We're not also talking about time at home. We're talking about in school. Okay, schools have to be more entertaining. Nobody asked what students do in their free time after school. Okay, so I really think that this entire essay needs to be thought out and rewritten. All right. So, in my opinion, I really agree with the idea of integrating new technologies and working at home in the new era education. All right, so this just really highlights what we've been talking about, that it's an off-topic response. It's not about integrating new technologies. It's not about working at home, okay? It's about incorporating more entertaining activities in the school day, all right? And whether that's important or not, okay? Or whether schools should continue to just be academically focused. All right, so I want you to think about these things and how you can create a more on-topic response, how you can analyze the question and think about it and plan your answer so that you're creating a response that is answering the question that's asked of you. All right, so Emilio, go ahead and correct these essays. Return them to us with your corrected essays. Send us your error correction list. So your mistakes, and next to each mistake, the correct language. And then, of course, your next set of essays. Okay, that's the third thing you're going to send to us all together. Try to do it in the next day or so you can really kind of keep up your momentum. I'll be waiting for them, so good luck.